Thank you for coming tonight. We're going to start the meeting a little differently. We're going to say the Pledge of Allegiance, and then after the Pledge of Allegiance, I would like you all to remain standing. We normally do a moment of silence, which we will do, but before that, I'd like to introduce you to two very special people, and I'd like to read a couple things that I would like all of you to know about. So in saying that, good evening, and today is August 13th, Tuesday, and with that, if you would all rise with the pledge of allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please stand. I would like to introduce you to Lisa Stratton and her longtime partner, David Ardman, who are residents of our community. And I'd also like to mention Lisa's ex-husband, Brian, too. And we are going to, I'd like to read something. We lost Alex, her 23-year-old son, last week. And I'd like to read a few things, if I may, to you. I wanted to remember Alex Stratton, who at the age of 23 left this earth early last week. Alex came to Florida a few years ago and became a resident. He lived here with his mom, Lisa Stratton, who I've introduced you to, and her life partner, David Ardman, in Indian Rocks Beach. Alex loved to fish, he loved to swim and go boating, and could often be seen on his fishing kayak in our local waters. Alex was diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome in 1998. He was 3 years old. Brian, his father, and Lisa were struggling daily to keep him happy, stop his crying, his withering, and even sometimes aggressive behavior. Places, sounds, smells, or seemingly nothing would upset him and cause crying and thrashing. Over the years, they saw many, many doctors, therapists, joined groups, and read everything they could put their hands on. They met with other parents going through similar struggles, and they put Alex in physical therapy, occupational therapy, psychological counseling, and special play groups. Begrudgingly, they also put him on anti-anxiety medicine and sleep aids. Some things helped. He had good days, even weeks, but nothing could fix him. He struggled through school, not because academically he was brilliant, but with the social situations and following particular rules and norms. They continue to this day to find new measures. Many have asked about a charity to donate in Alex's name. And Lisa has been researching autism spectrum disorder, and when she has one, we will also make sure that you're aware that you can contact me. One of the things that I read about him that meant a lot to me, I can pull this up now, was a poem that he wrote, and I asked Lisa if it would be okay if I read it. He wrote this poem when he was 12 years old, and it's called Green as Grass. We sit on the grass as green as can be. No one's there, just you and me. Up above our heads, the clouds pass by, gone before you get to say goodbye. The sun shines down on our heads. We feel like babies in our beds. It beams of light softly touching earth, the things getting all their worth. The ocean shines far out to sea. It shines just for you and me. For here we are on the hill with the green glass, hoping this time will never ever pass. I'd like you to take a moment of silence for Alex Stratton and his family. Thank you. You may be seated. In the future, if there is anyone who has had similar situation in their life and would like to reach out to Lisa, I would ask you to contact me. You can email me, or my cell number is 727-560-7565. Thank you. Ian, will you call the roll?
Commissioner Clark.
Yes.
Commissioner Hannah.
Here.
Commissioner Whitney.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Palumbo.
Here.
Mayor Kendall.
Here. Okay, agenda item number 1 is the report of our Pinellas County Sheriff. Thank you for coming, everyone, for Lisa and David tonight.
Good evening. The Indian Rocks Beach data for July, there actually wasn't much that occurred during that month other than the one incident that I think everybody knows about with the city employee. However, other than that, we had a couple of vehicle burglaries that occurred off of 1st Street and off of Bay Palm Boulevard that appear to be related, and both were as a result of unlocked vehicle doors, so that we do ask that everybody just try to be vigilant and lock their doors. We also had an incident that occurred at the Holiday Inn. It was a possible sex battery, and I refer to it as possible because it's still being investigated at this time. And then we had a couple of petty thefts that occurred at the CVS. And we also, if you'll see in there, you'll see a stolen vehicle report. However, that occurred, and it was initiated in Ballard Beach, but the resulting arrest occurred in Indian Rocks Beach and related charges as a result of that. Other than that, the activity from the deputies within the cities remains at an acceptable level. Traffic stops, traffic enforcement, house checks, and everything related to that.
Does anyone have any questions for Sheriff?
All right,
Thank you.
Have a wonderful evening.
Just to remind everybody in the audience that from 6:45 to 7, every commission meeting, the sheriff is here if you would like to talk to him privately. Agenda item number 2 is public comment. Any member of the audience may come forward, give his or her name and address, and state any comment or concern they may have regarding any matter over which the City Commission has control, excluding agenda items. All statements made to the City Commission shall be made to the City Commission as a whole, not directed to any individual City Commission member, and no personal or slanderous remarks shall be permitted. No speaker shall be interrupted, and no debate shall take place between the speaker and the City Commission. At this time, is there anyone who'd like to come forward?
Good evening. I'm Rick Walker. I live on the mainland of 14321 Passageway. I am the past president of the Indian Rocks Rotary Club, and I just came this evening to make a quick presentation. I think I can give this to you, Mr. News, if you wouldn't mind. Over the last year, we raised a considerable amount of money for charities, and part of that was raised with the Rotary Runs the Beach event, and that event raised over $4,000 in that one morning. And a big part of those events being successful was the city, by far. I learned my lesson a few years ago. I had to work with the Seminole Rotary Club and work with the city of Seminole. You guys are night and day, believe me. Your cooperation over the years to all the civic organizations and charities that you support with the special events and so forth makes a huge difference. Just to give you an example, that $4,000 added on, we raised over $27,000 for polio eradication, just our club. So with that, I'd like to present this plaque, which reads, "A Rotary Club Indian Rocks Beach thanks the City of Indian Rocks Beach for their generous support of the Rotary Runs the Beach event on April 6, 2019. And I thank you all."
There we go.
Thank you, Rick. That is awesome.
Okay, here we go. Thank you so much.
Thanks to the camera. Thanks.
Anyone else for public comment?
Good evening. My name is Kelly Sisterk. I live at 448 Harbor Drive South. I think you need to add an agenda item tonight. It appears that there were some problems on July 23 when the tentative millage rate was set, and hopefully you can fix that tonight. Our property owners may be thinking they will pay the same amount of city tax this year as last year because the tentative millage rate was set at the same rate as last year's millage rate. Unfortunately, most people don't know what the rollback rate is. I think it's especially important to distinguish between the millage rate and the rollback rate in those years when property values are climbing. I think that is why the state requires that the rollback rate be read aloud under certain circumstances. My understanding is that when the tentative millage rate will result in a citywide revenue increase of 6% or more, you must read the rollback rate at the meeting to set the tentative millage rate. That is in Florida Statute 200.065, and that was not done this year. Our city charter also has an additional safeguard when the city collects 6% or more in taxes over the prior year. The charter requires that 4 out of 5 commissioners vote to ratify that tax increase. Both those safeguards protect the public when a tax increase is in the works. I'm glad you have 5 commissioners here tonight. The July 23rd meeting had just 3 commissioners present. Hopefully, you can correct the millage rate without re-advertising the meeting. I think you also need to correct the proposed minutes from the July 23 meeting because they suggest that the rollback rate may have been read aloud by the finance director, and according to the meeting audio, they were not. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. Is there anyone else who would like to come forward?
I thought you did a wonderful job. John Fansteel, 448 Harbor Drive South. I fully agree with Kelly on this. At the last public meeting with the press present, only the tentative millage rate was mentioned. The rollback rate was not mentioned. The over 6% tax increase was not mentioned. Then people read headlines like this and think that you're not raising taxes. I'd also note that because the vote was only 3 and not the required 4, and the 35-day deadline had passed, the city might not be able to raise taxes this time. They might have to go back to the rollback rate. This shouldn't be a problem, though we have over $3 million in reserves. If you want me to read any of the Florida statutes or the Indian Rock Speech Charter, I'll be glad to. But as I said before, it's only fair and honest to inform the public at each meeting when you're substantially raising the taxes. And I hope you do this at the next 2 meetings. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Is there anyone else who'd like to come forward? Good evening, Don.
Don House, 2104 Beach Trail. Don't you just hate when members that aren't people that aren't members of your cult can do math and know the code? Kind of catches you off guard, doesn't it? Anyway, we do know what's going on. We're not stupid, and we can do math. We know the code. Obviously, people with experience over there didn't know it, and that's really kind of should be an embarrassment to yourselves and to the city. But as we're doing this, we need to correct it, right? I think that John and Kelly are right. If I've read the code correctly and I've done the math correctly, y'all are in egregious errors here, and they need to be corrected. So whatever you can do. I don't know if Randy was at the meeting, but he's usually pointed out things that were wrong, and I thought he would have at this particular one too. But the ones who've been here a while, I never thought I'd say this, but I miss RB, because when this happened with RB, he laid out every single thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Don. Is there anyone else? Okay, we will close the public hearing and we will go to agenda item 3A, which is the report of the city attorney.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I feel like I don't normally address public comment, but I think that there's been some representations to you that need to be addressed, in as much as there's been a suggestion that your legal team has not given you the advice you need, or your finance director has not done so. What was discussed was the The way that the ad valorem process works is within X amount of days of the property appraiser issuing its call for information, we have to provide a proposed millage rate. From there, that is often communicated as an administrative formality. This town uniquely has a resolution as part of communicating that. That is not required. In fact, Florida statutes are entirely silent as to the process for adopting that preliminary initial figure. Florida Statute 200-065 specifies that by resolution or ordinance, you must adopt a tentative millage rate and a final millage rate and a tentative budget and a final budget. This town does, or this city, does so by ordinance. With reference to your charter provisions, understand that all provisions must be read in peri materia, meaning giving meaning to all of the language that is in the provision. And there is in fact a provision that specifies that when the ad valorem rate and rollback rate results in an increase over 6%, that must be voted on by a supermajority. That is an accurate statement. That is an accurate reading of your code. It is also a partial reading of your code, because the subsequent sentence in that same charter provision specifically makes reference to that vote taking place at the approval of the ordinance adopting the final budget. We have 2 budget hearings coming forward. At those budget hearings, absolutely, you would need, if the proposed millage rate that staff has put forward and that you have on a preliminary basis said we are comfortable as an initial proposal, if that moves forward through your first and second reading, yes, you will require a supermajority for that vote. That is absolutely right. So the interpretation is correct but premature. And so that is the consequence of that. And further to that point, because of the amount that it reads in the legal advertisement that goes out, it actually will say at the top, proposed tax increase. And so that is also, there is no attempt deliberately or inadvertently to hide the ball on that. That is something that is will be handled, and I've also confirmed that point with your finance director. Again, I'm not in the habit of directly addressing, nor do I wish to debate public comment, but I want to make sure that in as much as you have been given legal advice from the floor, that you get the complete analysis that this body requires. With that, in the last month, I've had the occasion to meet with your city manager to discuss the revisions to the sign code, which we intend to bring forward before the Planning and Zoning Board and later this body in the coming months as we get out of the budget season. We also, I attended the Florida Municipal Attorneys Association conference where I lectured on ADA accessibility to websites and hosted content, so we are very much aware of that. And in fact, I've defended or have been counseled in at least 5 suits involving Pinellas County jurisdictions or claims involving Pinellas County jurisdictions, so very much aware of those issues as well, and continue to confer with your city staff as we work to address those. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have of the attorney.
Any of the commissioners, do you have a question, Vice Mayor? Ed? Okay, thank you.
Good evening. I just have 2 items. First is to follow up on our city attorney report. I'm happy to report that our city attorney was just certified by the Florida Bar in city, county, and local government law. He's only one of 291 attorneys in the state who hold that title, so congratulations. Secondly, we provided for you in your packet for the quarterly financial report. We'd be happy to answer any questions if you have.
Ed?
Is it ever possible to present these budgets with a pro forma so that we're able to compare quarter to date to a quarterly budget? It's very hard to look at an annual budget and a period-based actual. The variances are very difficult to interpret.
Yeah, sure. I can adjust down the total to the percentage of the quarter.
It might be helpful from my perspective. I don't know if the other commissioners feel the same way.
That's all.
That's all we have? Okay. We're going to go to the commission. Commissioner Hofnagel, do you have a report tonight?
No, but for everyone in the audience, I would just like to assure you that we had extensive discussions about the rollback rate in our one-on-one, or at least I did, in my one-on-one conversation with the finance team. And I believe that that comes up as a discussion item in a great amount of detail when we're going through the budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. Commissioner Flagg?
Just one thing, I understand there's a growing concern in the community. We've gotten some feedback about coyotes in Indian Rocks Beach. So in a discussion with our city manager, we are going to plan some type of forum to bring some experts in, some trappers in to see what type of remedies there are and to provide some education where that's concerned. So we will be in touch, I'm sure, and let everyone know when that's going to be a separate meeting here at City Hall. And we appreciate your concern and we will be addressing it.
Thank you, Commissioner Flagg. Commissioner Hannah?
Nothing this evening.
Vice Mayor?
Just one quick thing, for those who may or may not know, we have an app called C-Click Fix that you can install on your phone. And basically what that app allows you to do is take a picture, geotag something in the city that might be broken or something that might need repair or something of that nature. If you see something that just doesn't look right, you can send it into the city. I receive a lot of emails to say, hey, here's an issue or a potential issue in the city, could you take a look at it? And I think you'll get a much better response if you use this app. Plus we get to have the ability to track things, do some reporting on it and understand. I will say that I have been using it myself quite a bit just to put them in so that we could understand what's going on, see how things are getting fixed. So please take a look, install it on your phone.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I'd like to give you the calendar for the next month, until our next meeting. We have, in August, we have the Big C, which will be in Clearwater, and that'll be at 9 a.m. if anyone is interested. They give you a free breakfast. We have a special commission meeting on September 3rd, and that's the first reading of the budget. We have another on September 10th, a regular commission meeting, and then September 17th, we have a special commission meeting at 7 p.m. for the second budget reading. I would also like to let you know that on September 9th, normally I meet the first Monday of the month from 4 to 6:30, Monday with the mayor, but because it's Labor Day weekend, I thought that it would be best to do it on the 9th. So I will be in here from 4 to 6:30 if you have any questions. We had quite a group. I had 12 people for just the coyotes alone. So it's very popular and people like to come in and address some of their concerns. And I think there is a homeowners on the 12th of September, and that'll be at Guppy's, and that's from 6 to 7:30. And Action 2000 is 6:30 on September 9th, and that is their monthly meeting. With that, Dan, can you put up the... Recently, David Arden and myself, last week, we went to the Pinellas County Solid Waste Facility, and we had the tour, which is an hour and a half. And I took some pictures of all of the different parts, the proper recycling, reduce, reuse, recover, manage garbage, the operations, the yard waste, construction debris, restrictions and water control, how you treat the water that they have there. 1 million gallons is treated every day. We also saw what they burn and the waste and how they make energy from it, and how 45,000 homes are supplied with energy from that. We also were a part of the recycling, and they have a new pilot program where they collecting the metals and the recovery. They have a swap shop for painting, and I asked them if we could have an Indian Rocks Beach Day, and they have agreed. It is, what I had Deanne do is, and we'll put them out on the back so everyone can get a copy, but it will be August 26th, Monday, from 1 to 2:30. There's only 42 allowed in a class. There's about a half an hour, depending on questions, in the classroom, and then after that, they take you in a big van, and they take you around the entire property, which I believe is over 700 acres. It's really very fascinating, everything that they're doing. and all the new ideas that they're bringing in. For instance, like the paint, you bring your paint, you can go in there and it's free. And I hope that a lot of people will go because we've been talking about recycling lately, and so I wanted to get a grasp of everything and how, what goes on at the facility. So, Dan, if you can put these in the back for everyone, I would appreciate that. I think that's it for me. And with that, we will go to additions and deletions. Do we have any additions and deletions tonight? Okay, none. We'll move on to the consent agenda. Is there a motion?
Mayor, I'd like to read the
Oh,
items on the
yes, you can
consent
read it,
agenda.
that's good.
Consent agenda, there are 6 items on this evening's consent agenda. Item A, approval of the July 9, 2019 regular city commission meeting minutes. Item B, approval of the July 23, 2019 special city commission meeting minutes. Item C, confirming action taken during the July 23, 2019 special city commission meeting. Item D, approval of the public risk management health insurance renewal. Item E, approval of the fiscal year 2020 law enforcement contract with the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office. Item F, approval of the July 23, 2019 City Commission budget work session minutes. This has been a reading of items A through F, all items on the consent agenda for this evening, Mayor.
Thank you, Randy. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second. So it was Ed and Nick. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. Now we're on to agenda item 6, public hearing. This is an ordinance 2019-05, 2005-01, Gulf Boulevard, public reading, and this is the first reading. Randy, would you please read the ordinance?
Yes, Madam Mayor. City of Indian Rocks Beach, ordinance number 2019-05. An ordinance of the City Commission of the City of Indian Rocks Beach to rezone and reclassify lands owned by BC Indian Rocks Beach LLC at 2501 Gulf Boulevard in the City of Indian Rocks Beach, Pinellas County, Florida, legally described as lots 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, less the west 10 feet together with lots 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, block 8, re-revised map of Indian Beach, together with a 10-foot vacated alley lying west of and adjacent to said lots 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, and lots 1 and 2, block 40, re-revised map of Indian Beach, together with the west half of vacated alley lying east of and adjacent to said lots, and lot 9, block 40, re-revised map of Indian Beach, together with the east half of vacated alley lying west of and adjacent to said lot, and lot 10, block 40, re-revised map of Indian Beach, together with the east half of vacated alley lying west of and adjacent to said lots from its present zoning classification of business and medium-density residential, RM2, to a planned unit development, providing for approval of a corresponding planned unit development agreement, and providing for an effective date. This has been a reading of ordinance number 2019-05 by title only. As this is a rezoning, it is incumbent upon me to remind you that this is a quasi-judicial hearing. In a quasi-judicial hearing, you are not making law, but rather applying criteria, applying facts to the law to determine if criteria are satisfied. As we do this, there are some preliminary steps we often take in this posture. So first I will ask, has anybody had any ex parte communications with the applicant concerning this matter?
No.
Let the record reflect all have responded in the negative. Have any members of the commission conducted a site visit for the limited purpose of evaluating this? That is to say, I understand you drive by a number of places in your community, but have you gone to the site for the limited purpose of evaluating this application? Let the record reflect all have responded in the negative. With that, anybody who intends to speak before this body tonight, including city staff on behalf of the applicant, or otherwise testify before this body, please stand and raise your right hand now. Plain speak, if you're planning to talk, please stand and raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you are going to give before this body is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you, folks. Before we continue, because it is not frequent that we have this particular kind of rezoning before you, I'd like to just give you a little bit more context. Remember, this is considering the rezoning of a property to a planned unit development. So you are taking the existing zoning districts of B and RM2 and changing them to this planned unit development zoning. And in your code, under the PUD ordinance that was recently adopted in the last few years, Section 110-644-1 sets forth the justification for rezoning to a PUD, and sub 2 sets forth the standards to be considered. These are the criteria you look to as you go through this process, and the ordinance goes on to set forth the process and other laws. As you consider this, please be mindful that the primary concern tonight is the rezoning. Also, a PUD does provide for, and then when I say PUD, that is short for planned unit development. A PUD does provide for, the idea behind a PUD is added flexibility in the site design process as between the city and the developer. You'll hear testimony tonight concerning that. That also allows you some flexibility from the city commission in what you seek in terms of concessions from each side as you consider this project. Beyond that, are there any questions as far as the process this evening?
Yeah, I have a question. I also would like to clarify. The ordinance that you read, the last sentence, talks about first approving the conversion to a planned unit development. That aspect of yes, no, I do agree that is a quasi-judicial decision. The second aspect, which is providing for the approval of the corresponding planned unit development agreement, I am of the understanding that our approval of that agreement is not a quasi-judicial interpretation, rather it is our expression of policy, and I would like to confirm if that's correct.
That is in fact correct. The agreement is by itself is a legislative decision, and the rezoning itself is the quasi-judicial component.
Thank you.
That is correct. So with that, at this stage, we would now turn to city staff for its presentation.
Okay, as we said, we're looking at revising this property to a planned unit development. I think mostly everybody knows where it is, between 25th and 26th, between Gulf and First Street. Presently, the zoning on this property, the front half of the property in the reddish brown is the business, and the rear half is RM2. The front half of the property as business allows for a building height of 35 feet. Our code expresses building height as 25 feet above 10-foot piles, which is usually the garage as we describe it. And the rear is allowed for up to 36 or a total above 10-foot piles, or a total of 46 feet on this property. The way we do measure the building height is from the mean grade of the road, the center line of the road. So if the road's at 3 or 4 feet high, the building height from there is measured from 35 to 30, from like 3 or 4 feet to 35. So technically the building would be 31 feet tall. So you don't measure it from zero. You measure it from wherever the grade of the center line of the road is, which is a different interpretation, but that's how we've been interpreting it over the last numerous years. And that's how the code is written too, in the definitions of building height. Also, if this property was not rezoned and someone wanted to come in and develop this property, they could do so with up to from 34 to 37 townhouses on the site, and have a setback on the front of their property line up to, the 25 feet. Now, back in 2005 or 6, the alley was vacated in the center of the property, giving an additional 10 feet to this setback from the property. So their property line is 10 foot behind everybody else's along Gulf Boulevard. And the proposal that we're looking at here is looking at setting back the buildings 50 feet from their property line, or 60 feet from the previous property line that was established along Gulf Boulevard. We're looking at a couple variations here as far as the building heights, which they're proposing 42 feet. in building height. When they first submitted it, they submitted it at 39 feet, and I said, well, we measure from the center line of the road, of the grade. Well, after that, it changed to 42, because they were interpreting that they could measure it from grade. Also, they're looking at putting the pool in the front yard setback, and it would be 15 feet setback from the property line, along with the cabana and the accessory buildings for the pool. The other item that we're looking at is for parking, is that there are three bedroom units, 3 bedrooms in each unit, which will require 3 parking spaces. They are proposing 2 parking spaces in the garage, tandem, and 1 in the driveway on it. But they would provide, normally we say you can't stack the parking, is how it is required in our code. Let's see now. We've also worked with them extensively on the landscape plan. It's not final, but they have submitted different types of plants that we would like to use. They are proposing to save the big oak at the corner on 26th Street, which was requested previously. They're also installing sidewalks along 25th to the interior of their property, to the access to the garages and their private drive through the middle of the site. They were not going to propose sidewalks along 26th because of the oak tree, and it would be difficult for them to build it. We have the proposed elevations of this of these buildings with the different textures involved in different heights of the buildings. They fluctuate just a little bit to give the undulation that our design guidelines require. And these are renderings that we haven't put together. This is along Gulf Boulevard, and this is a 4-foot high fence along here. They came in at 6 feet to begin with, and we said, no, you got to go to the 4, that's what we require on that. And with extensive landscaping along Gulf Boulevard. There's an area between the fence and the sidewalk, which is that 10-foot right-of-way, and they will maintain that. At this point, I don't think it's going to be landscaped because the city has future plans for the whole landscaping plan along Gulf Boulevard. This is another view along Gulf Boulevard. This is looking down 25th Street, and this is the interior drive here, which it's a private road, but it's going to be built to standards so the garbage trucks can drive down that road and pick up the individual cans on that site. And then these are pictures of the existing site, which I'm sure everybody's well aware of, and the intersection of 25th and Gulf Boulevard, looking east on 25th, looking east on 26th Avenue. Actually, this is looking south on Gulf Boulevard. This is south on 1st Street. And another picture of the condos along 1st Street. And with that, I will take any questions. Ms. Brady,
Could you kind of add,
Yes, sir.
for the sake of,
Yes.
for the sake of y'all's discussion?
I'm sorry, were you sworn at the beginning of the process?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, my name is Greg Mims, I'm the city manager. I put 2 pieces of tape on the wall, and then Dean is so efficient, he pulled them off about 2 days ago and said, no, I'm putting them back up. The first piece of tape on that wall, it's just as y'all have your discussion, you can kind of keep in mind scale and size. The first piece of tape is the middle part of the wall, that's 25 feet from the front door. So as you talk about setbacks and heights of buildings and those things, that's our standard setback. And Hendy mentioned earlier that they could come in with a project and build up to legally build up. The second piece of tape that I put back up when Dean pulled it off was that's 60 feet. So as you talk about perspective of what these buildings are going to be or could be or what they look like, that's why I was up there. The third thing that I have is the tripod over there that's got the orange tape on the top of it.
that's 7 feet. So as we talked about, it's heading whenever the front part today is zone D, zone business, the back part is zone RM2. The front part you're limited to 35 feet, the back part you're limited to 46. So what we're talking about is 7 feet, that's 7 feet. So it's always good to keep it in perspective about, because sometimes people will lose perspective of feet. 7 feet is not 20 feet, it's 7 feet. But I'll defer back to Hetty for any questions that you might have.
Does anyone on the commission have any questions at this time for Hetty?
I have some questions, but I think after the applicant, I would like to address those.
Now we'll go with that. Yes, Mayor.
Would the applicant, Alexis, would you like to come forward at this time?
Good evening. My name is Alexis Creswell. I'm a planner at Waldrop Engineering, representing the applicant Taylor Morrison of Florida. Joining me here this evening are Craig and Travis from Taylor Morrison, as well as Brian Jackson, who's the project engineer with Waldrop Engineering, so we can answer any questions you or the public may have about the project. We do appreciate, this is a large site, this is an important site for the city, and you want to see it done right. We've really appreciated working with Greg and Hetty, revising the plan and getting it to a place where we can ensure that it functions well and also is really upholding the aesthetics along Gulf Boulevard, because that's what I think a lot of this is all about. I wanted to use my time just to specifically address some of the comments we received the Planning and Zoning Board and how we addressed those issues since that time, as well as just some few comments we've heard since that meeting. First on sound, we are next to 18 on the Rocks. Lot 1 is closest to that existing bar grill to our north. We do have a 6-foot tall precast wall, opaque wall, placed in that location along with oak trees and shrubs to attenuate the sound. We are also looking to implement some mid-story trees just to fill in some of that area and also help to mitigate the noise. We do include in the sales disclosure to the purchasers all of the adjacent uses, and certainly those unit purchases will be notified of that existing use, their hours of operation. Again, full disclosure to protect Taylor Morrison as well as the purchaser. We also use hurricane impact glass within all of the units, but certainly that does a lot to mitigate noise impacts. And then these units, the upper stories will be of frame. And I asked Craig, how does that help with noise attenuation? And the answer was, the block that's on the ground floor can't be insulated, but those upper stories being made of frame will be able to have that blown insulation to provide that extra layer of noise protection. So we're happy to address this in any way that may be appropriate within the bounds of the PUD developers agreement. We certainly looked at that issue. The bus shelter was mentioned. We are fortunate to have a bus shelter on the northwestern portion of the property, and we will be upgrading that to match with the city's white bus shelters with the metal roofs, which go really well with our architectural style as well, that old Florida style. So I believe that's worked into the developer's agreement, and that it would be not just similar, but exactly the same style of bus shelter as what you have currently along Gulf Boulevard. We were asked about lighting along First to our south. We are certainly amenable to the city that is seeking to install any street lighting program, but we know in this area there are not existing street lights. What we do offer through our communities is building lighting, coach lighting throughout, so just developing the site and having the units there with the on-site lighting we think will improve visibility in the night in the area without intruding into the neighborhood too much. So we know that was an item mentioned. Short-term rentals. Taylor Morrison of Florida has strict HOA documents that will come to the city as part of our plat submittal. And we know you guys are limited in what you can regulate at a zoning level in short-term rentals, but I can assure you that all of their communities, the Cove, anything else we do throughout the area is limited to a minimum of 6 months rental and twice per year. So the way those documents are set up to preclude the proliferation of short-term rentals, which we understand is an issue within the city. Something we've heard recently is about the color palette, and that the grays and blues we've selected are maybe not quite as beachy. This is our first reading, so we'd like to come back to you with some options. We just got that news today, so bringing back some optional colors to differentiate from that other project and just build into kind of the beach character you're looking to achieve on the site. So we will be prepared for that in September. And then the last item I have, and certainly I know you'll have questions, but on-street parking was mentioned. Each unit will have 3 spaces. If these were single-family units, they would not be required to have that much parking. So because we have the and because we're not single-family detached, we actually have a higher parking requirement. And we have found the parking works very well within the unit and on the driveway. We have been looking at any way we can provide some additional spaces. The site is very tight, and water quality is very important to have those green spaces on site to catch the water and have it clean before it leaves the site. But what we've worked out and can bring back to you again in September is on-street parking to our south along First Avenue. It wouldn't be solely for this community because it would be within the public right-of-way, but it would be an improvement that could help our community to the extent it would be needed, and also could be just seen as a public benefit to the city. So that is a solution we've looked at based on your concern. And I'll touch briefly on height. And Greg, that was it's always good to show people exactly what we're talking about in terms of the setbacks, but just want to re-emphasize that we're going lower with our buildings on the RM2 portion of the site along First Avenue. So we could go to 46 feet and we're keeping it at 42. We are looking to go to 42 on the frontage, but as the offset and to prevent any kind of canyon effect or having the buildings too close to the road, we're setting them way back into the site, as Hetty said, 60 feet. So we believe it'll be a very nice view shed with the decorative fence, the shrubs and the trees, and we're just excited to bring this project forward to you all. So with that, our team's here to answer any questions, and we would respectfully request your approval of the rezoning.
Would the city commission like to ask some questions at this time? Go ahead.
I would. Thank you, Alexis. I have heard some concerns about ownership. Could you explain how the Taylor Morrison will finalize the purchase? And will that be sole ownership, or are they extending it to other partnerships upon the closing once this is approved? Or if this is approved?
Upon issuance of permits, they will be the sole owner of the property. Okay. They don't have joint venture partners with their deals.
Thank you very much. And also, they're going to sell them as individual units, I would assume, not a bulk sale?
Correct.
Okay. And they will have a model center located?
Yes, ma'am.
And that was going to be on the south side next, those singular units over by 18 on the Rocks, correct?
Correct. Hetty's got the cursor right on Unit 4, which would be the model.
Okay. All right. Good. And just, I'm curious, your total build-out time, once you get permitting, what would you estimate the total build-out on this project?
To do as soon as possible, obviously, but with only 32 units in and out within 2 years.
2 years, okay. Thank you. And you did answer some of the parking concerns, and I was wondering if there was any way you could extend that driveway to fit a second car, and you're thinking because of the landscaping requirements, maybe that's not a consideration, but you did mention additional parking spots. They wouldn't be designated guest parking, they would be for the public on the south side?
I don't think the city we would love to designate them solely for our use. I think the city would not allow us to do so.
Mm-hmm. And how many spots do you think?
We could fit approximately 8 between 26th and 25th.
Okay. And you mentioned the 6-month minimum rental clause in the documents that Taylor Morrison is going to provide for those homeowners.
Correct.
Okay, very good. Landscaping, it looks like the varying tree sizes are pretty substantial. So is that the minimum we can expect from these drawings that we see? Maybe 20-foot trees at least? I mean, you've got some oak, and I'm assuming you're going to put some other natural flowerscape along the fencing as well?
Yes, and these specifications are at the time of planning, so we know in a good Florida growth season these can get large pretty quick, so the oaks will be between 12 and 14 feet at the time of planting. And right now, our community is in the process of visioning sessions. A great deal of emphasis is on the coastal theme. Can Taylor Morrison take a look at their renderings, and coloring, of course, was one thing that was brought up. Maybe a little extra detail to some design that would lend itself to a coastal theme, especially since the back of those units are going to be facing Gulf Boulevard. And I'm not quite sure exactly, but you know, they're pretty talented. They could come up with some shutters, some type of architectural design that might lend itself a little more to the coastal look and what we're hoping to achieve on Gulf Boulevard. If that could be the case, maybe you could bring that at the next meeting. And it is metal roofs and hardy board siding. Is that the product that I see on the renderings? Yes.
Okay, very good. I think that covers my questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Hand?
Relative to the short-term rental, 6-month minimum that you talked about, when Taylor Morrison transfers things over to the individual buyers of this property, will that covenant be in there and will proceed with the property? In other words, after you guys leave and they have their own homeowners association, or whatever, can they then change that, or is that go with the land?
An HOA would be able to revise the covenants at a later date, so.
Okay, that's a concern. Thank you.
Vice Mayor?
So you mentioned parking on First Street. What would that look like? So I see like dry pond and trees, or how are we going to address what you said? There's potentially 8 spots there. What would?
They would be located in the public right of way, so they'd be right where her cursor's going, just immediately to the east of the property line.
So we would be talking about removing that fence and tree line, or in this public park?
We would retain the perimeter plantings.
Yeah, the other concern I had, I think you mentioned it briefly, was when we talk about the bar grill is already established there, when we talk about you leaving, build out being done, my concern is there's still really no buffer zone between Unit 1, Unit 32, in that area that could turn into a noise complaint issue with those properties. I don't know how else we could address that, but that's definitely a concern. That's all I have for now.
Mayor, may I?
Yes, sir.
One individual had mentioned to me that studied this. Is there a possibility on the units next to the 18 on the Rocks that at this time, at this point in design, could the bedrooms and the living room be swapped on just those units so that the sleeping would be more inside the unit as opposed to the window outside, even though you have hurricane glass and such? Is that a consideration?
I will check into that.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Ed?
Well, I didn't know that this was the time, but with respect to street parking on First Street, that'll very quickly become beach parking. So I don't see that as something either way which influences the city. The absence of sidewalks is concerning to me from a pedestrian safety point of view. And I would ask us when we get to that point of the discussion that's specific to the agreement rather than the actual rezoning to maybe discuss more about pedestrian safety by asking the planners to put in a sidewalk without exception. I think that's something that minimum expectation. And in terms of the short-term rentals, I do believe there's a strategy that we can put in place to ensure that these units fall under our existing short-term rental ordinance. We can talk about that at the right time as well. I don't have any further questions for Taylor Morrison, but thank you.
Thank you.
Alexis, one more question. The ones next to 18 on the Rocks, there's the back with that additional footage too. So they start at where the building begins, right? So that there's 60-foot back as well, and only one unit is adjacent to that commercial property on that road. That might need some extra insulation or buffer. Okay, thanks.
Alexa, I read in from the Planning and Zoning Board, they asked you about the undergrounding of utilities, and as you are aware, we will be at some point down the road undergrounding Gulf Boulevard. What about the rest of this? Will you underground the entire project?
The city code requires them to underground.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, that's good.
Said with confidence.
A gentleman who was actually for the project, Peter Capriolis, he did ask that he owns several properties around you, and he wanted to make sure that the development respects property boundaries and peaceful enjoyment of the tenants of his properties. We have had some problems with developments on Gulf Boulevard that the respective property owners on the other side have had problems with starting too early, or and that is extremely important to me. And I want you to
During
be aware.
construction.
You're talking about
During
construction
the
process?
construction process.
Well, there's a code for that.
Well, there is, but sometimes it doesn't work out that way, so I want to make sure that they understand that that's a problem, and I know the residents don't like that. I think at this time, I'm going to have you sit, and then we're going to,
Before you sit, does staff have any cross-examination of the applicant? Okay.
I have one last question.
Sure.
The absolute height of the building, ignoring the measurement from grade, if I look on your, the elevations, what is the actual height of the building?
I'm going to let my engineer
Thank
answer
you.
that.
Around 48.
Approximately 48 feet.
No, that
Can't
can't be. What's
Off the Crowley Road?
Yeah, no, from the top of the roof to the bottom of
They
the
don't
pile.
measure.
Okay, we measured.
Penny, do you know?
Okay, fine, mid-roof then, sorry. So mid-roof to the bottom of the pile is how many feet? If we don't know,
Let
we
us,
can come
let
back,
us look
that's
closely
fine.
during public
Yeah,
comment.
no
We'll
problem,
come
thank
back
you,
with
yeah.
a correct.
'Cause
Well,
I
if
think-
it's 42 feet, the crown of the road's about 3.7, so it would be 42 minus 3.7.
Yeah, I just want the engineer, I got it, I just
Yeah.
was looking for the engineer to confirm.
Right, and we will make sure that,
Yeah.
before construction.
Because that goes a long way towards the.
It really does.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, we can verify that.
Okay, want to be seated? Okay, at this time, we're going to open the public hearing.
Members of the public are reminded this is a quasi-judicial hearing where you are offering competent, substantial evidence through your testimony to this body for their consideration of the rezoning. Thank you.
Townhouse 2104 Beach Trail. With my understanding of a PUD is the developer gives something and the city gives something, you come out with a good product. This one here, it seems like the developer is giving up the rights to do some other stuff. When I look at stuff on Gulf Boulevard, first thing I always look at is the trips per day. There's been no analysis of trips per day. I look at this and I'm thinking that it looks like the developer, if this was developed otherwise, the trips per day could be substantially more. And that by doing totally residential, the trips per day, I think on the residential it's something like 17 trips a day, commercial's like 100 or something for 1,000 square feet. So anyway, there's considerably less impact on Gulf Boulevard with this development than what could be developed there. And so the trade-off of letting them build higher seems like a win-win-win. We get less impact on Gulf Boulevard, we get a higher tax base, and the developer gets something too. So there doesn't seem to be a downside here, except that short-term rentals. I think the short-term rentals, HOA can be changed, deed restrictions can't. There you go. So if you get your deed if you put the short-term rentals in the deed restrictions, this is a win-win-win-win. Thank you.
Thank you, Don.
Mayor, if I may interrupt, just because I originally planned to bring this up later in the conversation, but I think in the spirit of the conversation that may come forward, as we do this as a rezoning, and we talk about short-term rentals, I know this is an issue of primary concern. I've discussed what I'm going to say already with the manager and planner as well. Your short-term rental ordinance that we passed in the last 2 years governs in the RM1, RM2, and I believe S districts by definition. Presently, the western portion of this property is business, the eastern portion is RM2. You are rezoning it to this new zoning district. In doing so, you take the east out of that scope of that ordinance, and the west was never in it to begin with. The use contemplated in this particular proposal is primarily residential, almost exclusively residential. And so my suggestion to you, this is merely a suggestion, that as you consider the PUD ordinance, you may also wish to consider adding language in the rezoning ordinance stating that the town's or the city's short-term rental ordinances, codes, and regulations shall apply within this district in the event it is rezoned. I'm not presuming the results of this hearing, but give that as an option for you to consider and address this in a manner that is within your power, as you are not, as a municipality, capable of mandating HOA restrictions, mandating deed restrictions, or mandating anything concerning duration or frequency or the prohibition of short-term rentals based on the preemption by the legislature. So that would be my proposal to you as you go through this. I present this now in an effort to allow for an informed discussion on the matter while also making sure that concern is addressed. But with that, Mayor, I tender the meeting back to you.
Okay. Is there anyone else who'd like to come forward at this time?
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. My name is Robert Pergolizzi. I live in Driftwood Sands, 2618 Gulf Boulevard, number 503. And I'm in support of this project. I'm glad to see something positive happening on this site. Every time I look at it, I shake my head and I wonder why is this site sitting vacant. It's kind of fallen into disrepair, and I believe that this property will fill in what's kind of like a blemish right now on Gulf Boulevard, and I think it's going to look great. And at the Planning and Zoning Board hearing, I spoke, and one of the questions I had was the sale prices. The response to that was between $400,000 and $500,000, and I think that would be a great asset to the community. Actually, would help our property values in this area. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Is there anyone else who'd like to come up at this time?
Good evening, my name is Eric Meyer, I live at 2316 Gulf Boulevard. I would like to speak in favor of this project, but I'd also like to thank Darrell Morrison for bringing this in their time to do this project and bringing the money to the city, which is, I think, is a great thing for us and for the future of Indian Rocks Beach. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Is there anyone else who'd like to come forward at this time?
Hi, I'm Tricia Priest. I live at 342 La Hacienda Drive. Thank you, Mayor and the Commissioners, for bringing this to our attention. And I would also like to speak in favor of this project. I remember Taylor Morrison took on the Cove when that was like a complete blight on the community. And they have made that into a wonderful, wonderful area that is really, I'm happy when I drive by there and look at it. I also agree with Mr. Pergolizzi with what he said. This is also sort of like a blighted area on our community. It seems like a scar there, and I think that this would, if they can make it work with all of the things that people have to talk about, I think that this would be a good way to use this property going forward, and also the density of it is not so intense that it's going to restrict other things around it. So I'm in favor of this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Tricia.
Good evening, Kelly Sisrick, 448 Harbor Drive South. I see too many negatives and unanswered questions about this project. In 2017, the Commission was generous in granting a special use exception to allow this project to go from condo from commercial to condo. I wish it had not. I wish I had spoken up in 2017. But that being said, I think it's better to allow this parcel to remain as a condo than to become a planned unit development. I think that will allow the city to retain a little more control because of how the land is titled. The deed restrictions associated with condo projects may be more protective. And I was following the short-term rental legislation very closely this year, and the Florida legislature almost passed a bill that would have disarmed HOAs from enforcing short-term rental regulations, but they never tried to attack condominium docks. So I think the deed restrictions of condominiums would be stronger. I don't like the height increase. I think both the increase in height and the placement of the pool on the front side of the parcel could be handled in special use exceptions, so I'm not sure why they need to do a PUD. I think they could keep it as a condo. If PUD status is granted, we don't know how this project will be used a few years after it's completed. The verbal assurances about the intent of the owners are not sufficient. HOA docs can later be changed by majority owners. And Taylor Morrison has recently gone into the rental-only market where they build residential structures and they retain them themselves. So I don't know what they might decide to do, a year down the line, since that's a current new business model that they're employing. Some other questions I had. Will the owners offer all the units for sale or retain them for use as rental property? And would that be for short-term or annual rentals? Is there any extra parking to accommodate guests or short-term rentals? And will the owners try to retain control of the homeowners association? Homeowners association restrictions can easily be changed in future years. So there's too many unanswered questions about how this project will be utilized, and the city will likely not get enough guarantees in writing to know what this property will become 2 or 3 years from now. I don't see how granting PUD status is either necessary or beneficial to the city, and I would urge you to vote no on this ordinance. And by the way, I believe that the height restriction requires a supermajority vote of the commission. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak at this time?
John Fansdale, 448 Hubbard Drive South. Hello again. In my mind, there are many things wrong with this ordinance, but I'll limit my comment to the height increases. Approval of this ordinance would give the developer a huge gift by allowing them to build the structures facing Gulf Boulevard 7 feet taller than the zoning allows. The setbacks and building height that were discussed in the rear don't alter that fact. The commission already has given a huge gift to the previous developer by changing the zoning from business to allow building a condo complex there. That was bad enough. IRB has a very limited amount of vacant land zone business, and business structures are typically only 1 story. Instead of this PUD, I would suggest trying to get it back to business in that lot that you gave away. The current developer, among other troubling things, wants you to allow them to build taller buildings than our zoning allows. They want buildings that are 42 feet high facing Gulf Boulevard, 7 feet higher than the zoning maximum. Note that the business buildings next to this property on both sides, that would be 18 on the Rocks and gas station, are single story. So in no way is this complex compatible with the surroundings. You should be aware that in the recent poll on Nextdoor, over 150 IRB residents said no to increased building heights on Gulf Boulevard. That's 150. 5 voted yes. I think we've heard from those 5 tonight. I hope you keep this in mind when you're considering any other ordinances. I urge you to resoundingly vote no on this ordinance. And frankly, shame on any commissioner if he or she votes yes for building height increases in Indian Rocks Beach.
Thank you, John. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak at this time? Please come forward.
Hi there, Julie Hoofnagel, 2 Fifth Avenue. First I want to say something nice. I want to say that I think the project will improve the look, and I think that they've gone a long way to say that they'll look at paint, and they'll look at different things to make it less boxy or more attractive along Gulf Boulevard. I do think that PUD is a good idea, I'll just say that. However, I believe the request from height from 35 to 42 feet sets a precedent for our future, and I can't say that I'm fully in support of that. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. Is there anyone else who'd like to come?
Beth Flynn, 914 Harbor House Drive.
Thanks, Susan.
I agree with Susan. I'd like to start with something positive. It would be nice to see something developed in that spot. I am concerned a little bit on the development, how long the development's going to take, what it's going to mean to Gulf Boulevard. You're building 32 units on a street that gets very, very busy. Right now we're in our lull, thank God. But I think it'd be better to see something a little bit beachier, a little bit more in line with what's around it. I think it looks good. The height restriction, I like the tape, but I need the 42-foot versus the 35 to really understand the impact. I'm not up to date on the PUD versus the condo piece, so I can't talk to that, but I am concerned about giving up any rights that we have to keep our town the way it is, to keep it beachy, to keep it coastal, and giving up something that other people might see as a give up and allow other people to come in and do something similar. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else who'd like to speak at this time?
Good evening. Randy Gritz, 466 20th. I think the project looks great. My only concern is this is an investor's dream. 400 to 500 for those units spells rental.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to come up at this time? Please come forward. At this time, Randy or Greg, could you give a definition of what a PUD, planned unit development, is so that some of the people who are here tonight have a better understanding of why we choose to do that on certain occasions?
Happily, Mayor. In your code, I'll read directly from the code. Section 110-642, Planned Unit Development, PUD or PUD. Land under unified control, planned and constructed as a whole in a single unified development or in approved phases. PUDs may include a variety of land uses and types of dwelling units, as well as related uses and facilities. There is no minimum acreage size required for a PUD. The PUD is allowed in every zoning district except the single-family residential zoning district. That is the code provision definition of a PUD, Madam Mayor. I would also add and emphasize again, we do not have the ability to compel a private property owner in how they incorporate their private property, whether that be by condominium or homeowners association or otherwise, and what restrictions they choose to put in those. As it relates to short-term rentals, again, we've talked about a proposal I put forward that this body cannot regulate through this special situation or otherwise duration, frequency, or the prohibition of short-term rentals. That goes beyond the scope of your authority as you consider the planned unit development and the rezoning this evening. You've heard testimony from staff, you've heard testimony from the applicant, you've now heard evidence from the public. You've closed that, Mayor. At this stage, I would suggest you continue through the hearing with the opportunity for additional presentation from the staff and the applicant.
Alex?
From staff.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you guys have,
No, we're
you guys are all good, okay. If the applicant would like to come back for some closing comments and let us know if there is anything else from the comments that were made that you can add to the conversation.
Just reiterating what the city attorney said, we do think the PUD is additional protection to the city because not only will we have the deed restrictions and covenants, but we'll also have a developer's agreement recorded with the city. Whereas if we came in under the straight zoning, all the enhanced landscaping and the different features we're proposing would not be bound to the property. So we do think the PUD just is an extra layer of protection for you all to know what you're getting with this proposal. In terms of Taylor Morrison of Florida, the applicant, if you go to their website, they do not do rental communities. That anything they're doing is the west coast of the United States in a very different real estate market, so, and different LLC entirely. So I want to address that concern. We did look at price points and in relation to the height and that conversation in general. And the additional height we've confirmed is 38 feet when you do from the bottom of the building and you don't take into account the elevation of the road. So 38 feet, 3 feet above what the code allows when you do that alternative measurement. Yes, sir.
Sorry, so 38 feet is from the bottom of the pile to the middle of the roof?
To the midpoint of the roof, yes.
The midpoint of the roof.
Yes.
So 38 feet, if I add another 5 to the top of the actual roof line, we're looking at 43 total. From a human's point of view, that's what I would see a 42-foot structure. That's what you're saying?
Yes, sir. I would submit in terms of that concern, I could just, again, this setback is substantial. Other properties are, you don't have another property of this size that could achieve that additional setback to offset the height the way we can. So this is very site specific. It's because of this unique property that we're able to step the buildings back and ensure that your streetscape view is going to be upheld. The height gets us 10-foot and 9-foot floors in the living floors of the unit. And the price points, Craig looked at the latest submittal, and with the design options, these units are going to be well above the 500,000 mark, and probably closer to 600,000 based upon what they've submitted to their investment group. So this will be a very high quality project that again will contribute to the tax base and help to redevelop the blighted property within the city. And we heard loud and clear about getting the color palette and look at the buildings each year, so we do look forward to coming back in September and addressing that. And again, we submit, we're in agreement with staff and believe this is fully in compliance with your land development code and comprehensive plan as set forth in the staff report and application materials. So again, thank you for your time this evening, and if you have any other questions of our group, we're happy to answer them.
Any other questions from the commission? Dan?
So this is going to be fee simple ownership of each lot. Is that what we're talking about here? Each person who buys the townhome will own the land and the building?
Correct.
Okay. And Randy, just a question for you. I could have a PUD and build a condominium too, right? I'm not restricted from building a condo if I want to under a PUD.
No, you're not restricted as a private property owner from doing that, and as the definition provides, it contemplates a variety of land uses and types.
So this isn't about whether it's a PUD or a condominium. That's what I'm trying to put that.
No, it's
not discussing whether it's a condo or a
the rezoning to a PUD is not to accommodate the incorporation method. It's to accommodate the contemplated structural arrangement of the proposal, allowing both parties to negotiate on the terms without the need for a series of variance and special exception applications to accommodate each and every component.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Vice Mayor? Mr. Hanna? Commissioner Hyde? Any other questions at this point? Okay, well, then I'm looking for a motion.
I have a procedural question. Are we going to vote about the approval of the PUD separate from the approval of the development agreement, or are we going to vote for them both in a single vote?
The ordinance is contemplated as incorporating the agreement, so sometimes you have this sort of duality of the hearing. Your concern is saying, well, the ordinance itself raises it has a quasi-judicial posture, but it incorporates an element that's legislative. I would suggest that now that you've closed the public hearing, you have the discussion as to all aspects, and the final vote would be on the ordinance with the incorporated agreement.
So if we're going to propose additional criteria, how are they going to be reflected in the ordinance?
So you're saying
such as sidewalks or coastal themes or whatever, how are we going to incorporate that into this reading of this ordinance? What we approve it is.
I understand the question. I just didn't look like staff
I would like it to make sure we're knowing what we're doing on this.
Well, I think what we could do is, you know, I put the conditions, and when they come back next time, that, like the site plan would reflect, I'm not quite sure where you want the sidewalks, but I mean, they could reflect the options of different colors when they come back too. You know, different palettes maybe that they would use. But I think you need to be more specific on the sidewalks. The city normally doesn't require sidewalks, so I think what they were looking at was just bringing from Gulf Boulevard an existing sidewalk down to their site. Just wondering where else you were talking about more sidewalks.
Yeah, I just wanted to pause that discussion until we understand how we're going to actually vote, because from my personal point of view, I think it's a no-brainer that this has to be boxed into a PUD. I just don't know where our opinions about other aspects get reflected and how they get voted upon. That's all I'm asking.
And I think the way that would happen would be like other ordinances that we have, is that you reach a consensus on the items that you'd like for them to address. They'll go about their way to do that, and then the documents that we'll put together for the next public hearing will reflect what you have in there, and then you'll still have the final say when they present, you know, whether everything's okay or not. But it's just, you know, sidewalks. You make your recommendation on where you think they should go, you get a consensus, and then just go down the list. You know, if there's other things, you just hit all of them, and they'll have their marching orders, and then the documents of things that were reflected, and I still have to present them back to you at the next meeting, and then you can still tweak or whatever before the final ordinance is advertised.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Anyone like to make a motion?
I think I would like to make a motion, but I just want to say, I think we have an opportunity this evening to transform an eyesore that so many people have talked about on Gulf Boulevard probably the last 20 years. And in doing that, make a community that I think we'd all be proud of. The development is going to be built by the same developer that built the Cove, and the homeowners in there, most of them are full-time, part-time residents, very civic organized. If we could attract residents like that in a new community like the Cove on the north end of town, I think we'd be very fortunate. And there's going to be some uncertainties down the road. You know, you can't possibly have a crystal ball to say, you know, everything is going to fit right into place, but I think we all want what's best for the city, and with all the advantages, you know, this new development does bring increased tax value and increased business to our city. Those homeowners in there will spend money at our businesses. It'll be definitely an aesthetic improvement to Gulf Boulevard corridor, a lot more green space. What developer gives away 60 feet of frontage? This is an amazing amount of green space that will look and change the look of Gulf Boulevard in that location. The developer also has agreed to put in the trolley station, which is nice, but mostly that 60 foot of Gulf Boulevard eliminates the condo canyon, which everyone is emphasizing on Gulf Boulevard. It maximizes our green space. You know, I think we can, with a PUD, establish a strong, trusting relationship with Taylor Morrison. They've proven to have a track record in our city before in the Cove. I think that establishing a PUD and then working on some of these other areas that we asked them to, and using the standardized height of 42 when we're setting back that whole community to 42, instead of right now, if there were no PUD, no changes in zoning, a developer could buy that and put 35-foot rental units across Gulf Boulevard and a 25-foot setback, rent them out as short-term rentals, do RM2 in the back with 46 height and rent them out as short-term rentals, and the look would not nearly be as cohesive as we would see with this development that they're recommending. So I'd like to also reiterate that all the building codes, housing codes, the other land use regulations still play in place with this PUD going forward. So I would like to make a motion to approve and thank the staff, Taylor Morrison and his representatives, NRP and Z, Hetty, for all the work they've done on this. And I think it's a viable solution to this empty parcel that we've had sitting stagnant for the last couple of decades. And if we do nothing, then we're prepared to sit back for another 20 years and see vacant land that is sitting there that is not kept up, that people are dumping on garbage, that there's undergrowth where varmints are laying around. I mean, we've got to make a decision sometimes to be brave and move forward. And I think any of the other things between the city and a builder like Taylor Morrison, we can work out. So I make a motion to approve the PUD.
There's a motion, is there a second on the floor?
Well, would you like to add some of the aesthetics that you would like to put in at this
Yes,
time?
for the next meeting, the aesthetics that we talked about in the questioning with Alexis would be brought back as far as color scheme, tropical scheme.
Mayor, I think once you're doing, we make the motion in the second, and then how we would do that is go through if there are individual
After that,
elements
okay.
that we wish to make sure are incorporated into the draft agreement for the next version, that would be the way to do it. So there is a motion on the floor. Is there a
Is
second?
there a second?
I'll second it.
So there's
A motion and a second. Would the maker like to make any comments? You said plenty. How about our second?
I think it's going to be a real advantage. Obviously, like everyone else, I am concerned about the height, but how high is the ceiling? I'm just looking arbitrarily. The other issue people have brought up is, well, we needed businesses there. It's been laying there for 20 years. I haven't seen anybody rushing the checkbooks to try to, do that, right? So I'm happy with what we've done.
Any of the other commissioners, vice mayor, anyone would like to make any comments?
Yeah, I wanted to thank Diane for putting all those points out. I
Excellent.
do think the actual building measures 38 feet. I think that's really something to take a step back, think of the 35 foot and 38 feet. The definition of 35 feet also went up to the middle of the roof, didn't go up to the top of the roof. The fact that we're talking about a few extra feet because of the grade, I'm not even clear, and I don't think anyone has worked through all that yet. When I did one of these, I had to fill in with 36 million tons of dirt to get the darn thing up to grade before I could do the building. Eric, thanks for all that dirt you found. So, yeah, it sounds really egregious when you hear the 42 feet versus the 35, but I really would encourage people to look at the 38-foot actual number, because that's probably a relatively more relevant to think about. I think the overall, we have all these different zoning categories. There's no other business normal way to develop this without a PUD. You'd have a half a dozen variances here and there, and that it would end up to be just an absolute administrative mess. So I keep hearing back and forth about the PUD, but if this is not a candidate for a proper plan development, nothing is. I mean, so that's not even an issue in my mind. I would like to have a set of bullet points coming out of this discussion as to areas that we would like Taylor Morrison to address in our follow-up meeting. One issue that Eddie asked about was the sidewalks, and what my point is I don't see sidewalks on all four sides of the external development, and I think when we have all those cars going in and out, it would behoove us to have crosswalks and sidewalks coming into those driveways there. So, other than that, I don't have any comments on colors and stuff like that. I think that's been brought up. But yes, I would like a sidewalk plan presented to the City Commission at the next meeting.
Commissioner, during your comments earlier, you made a comment that you thought the short-term rental issue could otherwise be addressed. Would you like that addressed?
Yeah, I would like to amend the motion, that the motion to approve ordinance 2019-05 on first reading, to rezone and reclassify the lands at issue. I'd like to amend that motion to include an explicit statement that this new rezoning will be subject to the short-term rental ordinances of the City of Indian Rocks Beach.
Commissioner Flagg, as the maker of the motion, are you amenable to that proposal?
Yes. Yes.
Mr. Commissioner Hanna, are you, as the second,
Yes.
amenable to that? As the maker of the motion and the seconder are amenable to that proposed amendment to the motion, it is so moved. So the motion on the floor at the moment is to approve the rezoning of the subject property to a planned unit development subject to an amendment to the PUD ordinance, rezoning ordinance, including language applying the city's existing short-term rental restrictions to this rezoned district. The commissioner, so that is relative to the PUD zoning district and the findings the commissioners have made thus far. As it relates to the agreement itself, Commissioner Hufnagel has just proposed or expressed a desire to see some kind of proposal relative to sidewalks on the outside perimeter of the development. Is there any kind of consensus from this body or any sentiment from this body concerning that request or desire?
Yes, and I think there's additions to that as well. I want to understand so do we want to take that one first?
Let's do one at a time so we get bullet points. Yeah, and specifically I would like a sidewalk plan with crosswalks. An overlay to the site plan identifying sidewalks and crosswalks.
So you want sidewalks and crosswalks?
Sure, because you're crossing those quote-unquote private roads, but a kid on a bicycle doesn't know it's a private road.
Okay, right. That's another 25th.
That was also a big question from the plan.
P&Z.
Yes, they wanted those. And I have talked a little bit with Bland about that too, about a crosswalk, you know.
My PUD has crosswalks.
Okay.
You just paint them
Good.
on there. It's not
Yeah,
it's not that complicated.
Okay.
Paint 'em on.
Yeah.
So is there consensus on that one?
Yes.
There is consensus for internal crosswalks and external sidewalks. Is that a correct characterization of your request, Commissioner?
Yes.
Okay.
An
Just wanna make
overlay,
sure
an
we're
overlay to
precise.
the site plan identifying crosswalks and sidewalks on the site.
Yes.
Got it.
Understood. Are there any other elements that you would like to see addressed in this process, Commissioners?
I have a little list. The noise, the wall on the intersection between Unit 1 and 18 on the Rocks, I understand it's a precast 6-foot wall. I wouldn't mind if it's 10 foot, but I would like to have a very explicit plan for noise reduction in between 18 on the Rocks and the development. So, and that's really to protect the future homeowners, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. The noise is going to emanate in all directions, but I would like some noise reduction strategy, a little more than just a 6-foot wall. I'll leave you up to your engineers to come up with what that is, if you guys are amenable to that.
Yeah, that was one of my points that I definitely wanted to add. So yes.
Consensus? I see two shaking, two nodding heads. Okay. Consensus relative to that. Thank you. Are there any other elements as it relates to the agreement and elements of the rezoning that you wish to see addressed as individual commissioners?
And do you have any
There was
more?
one more thing the P&Z board said. I just
The
can't
bus shelter,
find
that
it.
the actual language be, that the bus shelter be not substantially similar but identical to the existing bus shelters in the community. I know at the P&Z hearing, they were amenable to that, had no objection, but that language is not yet reflected.
So we'd like a bullet point that specifically states that the pedestrian shelter for the bus stop is consistent with the city's, identical to the city's current design standards.
Yeah, I was just making it clear that the city will provide development with our plan.
That's great.
Any more, Ed?
No, I'm just trying to remember. I think we covered the P&Z's issues, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I have the same words here. Diane, anything else from you?
No, just look forward to bringing back some color schemes and changes, little changes in the architecture. Sounds good.
There was the color palettes.
Yes.
Yeah.
The color palette and the little architecture.
Architectural themes to, I guess let's be clear, we want architectural themes to increase the coastal appearance of the Gulf Boulevard facing development. Is that what you're saying?
Correct.
I agree with that.
It's two members. Are there at least three members who are in agreement with that? Okay, there is consensus for that element as a requested presentation to you from the developer.
I have one last question, sorry. Greg had mentioned, or Eddie had mentioned that maybe they won't be developing that right away because of landscaping to come in the future.
No, it would be side. It'll be landscape. But
Okay.
what we didn't want to do was, discussions we've had about Gulf Boulevard is, as the undergrounding, as phase 2 is completed by the county, it'll be a county project. Is that part of the whole process we're going through now on Gulf Boulevard, we want to develop a streetscapes plan where in the future, as we work our way to the north, we would further enhance that landscape and to match what we want to do with Gulf Boulevard. It doesn't make any sense to go and just require them to spend a lot of money on a light landscape when we know we're going to go in and tear it up, by taking out the poles and by wanting it to match ultimately whatever the streetscape plan.
Maybe they could put a few bike racks there in the meantime, though. That would be a nice way to make it a little more pedestrian friendly. Is that something we could ask them to do?
You want that in there?
It'd be nice if
Go
they
ahead, put it in. Is everyone in agreement with that? Are you done so that I can ask?
There was one more thing about planning and zoning board, they had about the lighting on First Street.
The lighting on First Street, meaning they wanted street lights on First Street?
No, they didn't. First Street people, the First Street homeowners?
No, the planning and
The
zoning.
planning and zoning board was a topic of discussion during that.
It didn't come as one of their three recommendations at the end, though. Lighting was one of the.
Greg,
Was it?
what would you like to?
I would agree with the presentation that was made, is let's work with them on the project. The buildings have lighting on the interior and exterior all the way around. If at some point in the future where we need additional lighting, it's something the city can address by single street lights, because we use the LED. So I would let them do their thing, and if we need to enhance that, we can. Most of our street lights throughout the city are at intersections. So in most of those intersections we have. So I would let them proceed with their development with the outdoor lighting that they have, and as part of the finishing of the project, if they need it, we can address it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Vice Mayor?
Commissioner Hanna?
Commissioner Hanna? do you
No,
have
the only
any
thing
more comments? Add?
No, I'm all.
Any other stipulations?
No, the only concern I had was about reviewing the one unit, if you would look at flipping the living room and the bedroom.
And the developer expressed a willingness to.
Right, it's on.
That would, just to clarify, that would be incorporated in the point that you've already addressed, and that would be the noise abatement plan.
That's it.
They would just either incorporate that in or not when they come back.
Yeah, and that's fine, I just wanted to review it. Okay, thank you.
Vice Mayor?
So the question I would have is about First Street parking. What was that discussion? What would it look like if there's something that's going to be?
Well, I would agree with, whichever commissioner made the comment earlier, I think maybe it is that if you place parking in the right of way, it's going to become beach parking.
I
agree with that.
All of it's going to become beach
And
parking.
the only other thing I would reemphasize with you about parking requirements, ordinances are not perfect, but single-family houses are only required to have 2 spaces. It doesn't matter if you have 8 bedrooms in your house, you're only required to have 2. The only other option that Katie and I talked about, and maybe I think it was touched on earlier in her presentation, was that there's a way that they could widen out some or all, maybe some of the driveways to give additional space, but the downside of that is then you start to lose the drainage plan that they have, how the water percolates, and you lose aesthetics by doing that. So.
And also their front door is on the other half where the green space is. There's going to be a sidewalk going in there. So if you have a car parked right in front of your, house, you're not going to be able to have a sidewalk in front.
So to answer your question, I think the bottom line is, even if you require them to move the curb back and put parallel parking out, down both blocks of what they're building, I don't think you're going to achieve anything by that, because on days when the sun's out and people are going to the beach, that's going to be beach parking.
I remember when we had the East Gulf Boulevard discussion, everyone in those condo units were saying that
people are parking in their guest spots to go to the beach.
Yeah. But you know, most of those townhome communities all have the same
Yeah.
single car tandem
Yeah, I-
parking layout as this community is recommending.
We call it musical cars when we have to move our cars. So.
You do it.
Yeah.
The other question was the language in, I know that short-term rentals, we had some language in the HOA document. I'd like to continue to see what we could do with keeping that as long as possible in those documents, or anything that we could do to mitigate short-term rentals in their HOA documents.
Well, that's one thing,
Sorry.
one thing that I think when I stepped up at one point, Randy addressed, but I just want to make very clear, and then Randy can help me out with this, is that there needs to be no misconception that the city does not have the ability to regulate the duration of stay in this project or any other project. Now, they've indicated that initially, or for some length of time, it's in their documents, but you can't put any weight on that being long-term. They have the same legal rights to convert the different lengths of stays like everybody else, unfortunately, in town. And Randy,
I think you've made the salient points. We don't have the ability, you know, this private property rights are very firmly entrenched in the state's constitutional and statutory provisions, and we don't have the ability to mandate what those documents look like. We do have the ability to pass ordinances of general application. We are doing that. If passed today, you would be doing that, including this body. The motion on the floor is to rezone this to a planned unit development and make clear that this new zone is still subject to the current ordinance, and for as long as the state legislature gives us the blessing to continue to regulate our own community. And so that is the extent of that. You know, and if there's anything to be had, it's in the way we regulate short-term rentals in a broader sense, and that's what this body's carefully done over the last 5 years.
Any more? Before we go on, I want to thank the audience for coming out tonight and for this and giving testimony, all the research that many of you did on all sides. We appreciate that. I also want to thank the commission for doing your homework and reading and all of the good ideas that you brought forward for this project. And Deanne, with that, I would like you to call the roll.
Commissioner Fry?
Yes.
Commissioner Hanna?
Yes.
Commissioner Hooknagel?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Palumbo?
Yes.
Mayor Kennedy?
Yes, motion carries 5-0. Next is agenda item number 7, other legislative matters. We have none tonight. Agenda item, work session item, we have none tonight. And then we don't have any other business. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Thanks.
We are adjourned. Thank you. Good night.